Yes, hello everybody. My name is Christian Kane. I am project manager for DF. I'm located in the south of France in Marseille, and I'm responsible for the ReUseHeat project and implementation of our demonstration for EDF, in which we have the partnership together with Métropole Nice Côte d'Azur and the CSTB. So, the main objectives of our work within the project is actually not really the implementation of the technical solution in the sense of the low temperature district heating network, but the realization of innovative dashboard solution. So our aim is basically to raise the awareness, thanks to this dashboard, about waste, heat recovery, and renewable type of low temperature district heating and cooling networks. So to put in the front the performance of these systems and let people, acknowledge people this type of systems. In the best case, once these people have understood the technology lying below this type of solutions, they might be able to have an active role in the overall system efficiency if they get the right feedback from this type of systems. What we have also explored within the work was not just the creation of the pure dashboard, and so to let people access to the information about the temperatures, the low temperature district heating cooling network, but also integrate additional services just to ensure that we have enough stickiness so that this service, this dashboard, can be seen more in a long-term perspective and be of use for these end users. And if we say end users, we really mean all citizens that might be interested or affected by this low temperature district heating and cooling network in a certain territory. And sure, what we have done within the work is also to evaluate the scalability and the modularity and replication of this type of solution, so of the dashboard, so how we can exploit it in the long term. As said, we are mostly three partners working on this demonstration. First of all, Métropole Nice Côte d'Azur, where actually the demo site was planned to be implemented, and they mostly have contributed on the specification, on the creation of this dashboard, so to play the role as the client or end user, and at the same time to be a vector for communication, dissemination of this activity, for then in the framework of the exploitation replication activities. As said, we are mainly in charge at EDF for the realization of the, let's say, the technical part. And CSTB, they have been most in the project thanks to their simulation environment, which is called DemoSim, and which is a tool which can provide a very early assessment in the planning phase about the performances from a technical point of view of low temperature district heating and cooling network. So thanks to the project, they have improved the assessment methodology and expanded the libraries and been adapted to the case of the reuse of waste energy. So I will spend a few words to show you the original demonstration site. I will explain you better why we say original demonstration site afterwards. So our waste heat source is actually a wastewater treatment plant. This wastewater treatment plant is located fairly near this zone that you see visualized here, which is not a photo, as you see, it's a rendering. It's actually a new district which is under development, and this is actually the rendering how it should look like when all main building and infrastructure projects are implemented. So as you see in the foreground, it's an intermodal zone. So it's a very important node in the area of Nice. You have just in the background the airport, which should be connected very directly with the new railway line. And so a new railway station is under construction. In the meanwhile, there are different buildings are built around this area. Here I have another view. I think it's come a little bit more bit clearer. So our catchment site, so our distribution pool is actually this area that you see. I hope with my mouse. I EDF is where is our site in Nice. This area here is actually our main catchment pool where all the clients should see the day. What was the very first plan was to use the wastewater, which was not so far as you hear us right now. You see this the location on the right side, it's the wastewater treatment plant. And the first plan that we had was to use the main collector feeding the wastewater treatment plant to use it at waste heat source. Numbers that have provided to us were looking good in terms of capacities of available waste heat, in terms of capacity and also in the duration, so with no much seasonality fluctuations. But after that, we have metered the site. We have realized that actually we're far beyond these capacities. Actually, we had just half of them available, which would not enable us to satisfy all this area. So the first lesson learned would say is that you have really be able to be qualified correctly with metering data by your waste heat source. So this brings us to move over to the wastewater treatment plant itself and use the water after it has been treated and before it gets through piping into the sea to use that as the source, because they have more or less the same temperature as the temperature regime as the wastewater treatment collector, which also is quite similar to the seawater itself. So we are on the same temperature ranges, which go between 8 and 25 up to 30 in the summer. So the main challenge for this project was to connect the station, so the source, with a very long piping until reaching the distribution network. And it has to be taken in this far because we have the whole airport area, so we have no other connections to the sea or to other infrastructure for waste heat. So this is a must. The project, as you see on the right, put the logos of our subsidiary, a subsidiary of EDF, is Dalkia. It's the biggest district heating and cooling network provider in France. And its own subsidiary is Dalkia Smart Building, which has been at the origin of the project and development of it. Here you have another view of the same area. So this was actually, you have the sites and the substation that have been planned and the regional planning. But what has to be said is that actually this project is not a public-led project, so it's not related to a public delegation of service and associated tendering process. It's a purely private development of the company. So it's up to the company to develop the whole infrastructure and to commercialize the heating and cooling contracts with each and every customer. And there is no clause or no contract or no obligation for these clients to connect. So it's a pure commercial activity which has to be competitive in terms of pricing for the client. Unfortunately, in this case, as these private projects are, we have encountered many delays, mostly connected to let's say the delays that have been caused by the constructions itself of the buildings, and also with the commercialization of the different clients, which one of them, the most important one, that of the airport. So this has forced us to search for a new demo site, or better verification site, on which to install the dashboard. So as our main demonstration is the dashboard itself, we searched for another type of district heating and cooling network with the same temperature regimes on the low temperature side within the region. The most suitable one was that of La Seine-sur-Mer, which is in Toulon, in the city of Toulon, which might be more known than the La Seine-sur-Mer itself. And in this case, it's a seawater-based network. So we moved from Nice to La Seine-sur-Mer, which is just besides Marseille. It's about 45 minutes hour drive. And it's actually one of the most important ports in France, mostly because, as you see below the written Toulon, it's the military port of France, where also where we have the harbor. And on the same harbor on the right-hand side, you see La Seine-sur-Mer, is where actually our network is located. So this network, as you see in the scheme, we have the caption of the seawater, which is done at 4 meter depth, just beneath the shore. exchanges directly in the pumping station. We have the exchange between the seawater network, which is driven by salty water, with the primary network, which distributes the water to all the customers, which is done with proper water, so we have no problems of corrosion or others with the piping. So in the pumping station, we just an exchange station, as you might call it. We just find the pumps for the both networks and plate exchangers for exchanging the calories without any exchange of the water themselves. And then I visualized to you, we have these small cycles, the different customers that are located along the network. And if you see at the end of the network, we have part of the network which is in orange and yellow, in red and orange, actually because that is a special substation which is not working at a low temperature regime, but where we have a semi-decentralized substation where rises the temperature directly up to 55 degrees. And this deserves 3 substations connected to a school which do not have any cooling need. And then among all the substations, we have all figures of cooling and heating type of substations. So some just need heating, some need both heating and cooling with reversible heat pumps or with thermofrigo pumps, as we call them. So heat pumps which are able to produce both heating and cooling at the same time. So the choice of this network was just for the availability, but also because it's already constructed. It's on the same company, so we don't have to change any contractualization. And moreover, the seawater itself has actually the same temperature regime and also the same influences as that one of our wastewater treatment plants. So from a technical point of view, we are more or less on the same architecture of the network. So now what our aim is to retrieve the real-time data of this network and put it into a dashboard which should be accessible by the whole public. That could be the citizens and workers, let's say, within this area, or any other person that's interested into the theme. So now we're going to the design process itself, the dashboard. And what we have used is the design thinking approach. So we moved from the very early stage at a very low TRL level in the late 2017. I put a TRL 2 because we had more or less an idea about what the dashboard should look like, but we didn't have specified what the exact content and the format it should be. Then we moved on, thanks to design thinking approach, after TRL 7. So actually we have a system prototype which can be demonstrated in what we call an operational environment. And thanks to the validation and verification process we are undergoing, we should achieve to have by the end of the year a complete and qualified system, so a TRL 8. Here you have the typical curve of the design thinking approach, and which you see is then mixed with an agile type of approach where we can experiment and get user feedback. And then for the lean startup, for the verification process at the end. So at this first stage in the design thinking approach, you go really far broad. It's a part of the brainstorming where we are able to put down all different subjects that we'd like to put into this type of system. And we also have explored more specifically 3 different types of dashboards before being able to choose one and to go into what we call an MVP, so a minimal viable product. So it's the minimal unit of development we engage into before adding additional services, and which enable us in an easy manner, an agile manner, to change and replace things before going to something more comprehensive. So the very first part, the very first step was to have a workshop with different stakeholders, the security operator, local authority, and the DCFC itself. And so we had the first phase of brainstorming, a part for inspiration, and then we go into co-construction. So during the brainstorming, we really collected on Post-its all the ideas that were in the heads of the people around us. So at first to have all the expectation on each and everybody, and in terms of expectations, so the shoulds, but although they shouldn't, because actually we are talking about a certain type of technology that will be put into the public realm, and so avoid to have the rising of questions which could confuse or go in the wrong direction in the head of end users. We also put down the specificities of this type of system, so of low temperature district heating cooling network based on waste heat recovery or renewable energy that we want to put further, to put in forward to differentiate them from, let's say, conventional or fossil fuel type of systems. And then we spent also quite a time to identify what is and who these end users are, what the expectations are, and how we can reach them. Then once we have gone through this type of activity, we go on to inspiration. So we had done background work on 3 types of designs, let's say, of this dashboard. So we had a first one in which we choose a web-based design. So it's a web page which is accessible by any end user via any interface, might be a PC or a laptop or a mobile phone. And we started to slow down also what the content should be and what it should look like. Another option that has been explored was to have a display, also a screen, but it has to be put in the public realm where any person that was walking through this public space can stop and start exploring this type of system. And that it should be self-explaining. We also choose the idea to deepen the idea of have something that can be, let's say, a red line for somebody not aware about this type of system and not knowing really what he's stumbling on. To simplify the explanation, in this case, was to use the idea of the tree in order to create this red line and this storytelling for this dashboard. And the third option that have been explored was to showcase this information on the airport of Nice, which is actually the second airport in France. So there's an important flow of tourists, might it be for personal, for professional manners, but we explored there also what could be the information that could be displayed. So any passerby, any tourist, any person passing by the airport could grasp during his journey. And then we spent time into the co-construction, really pen at hand into different groups to try and really put down step by step all based on a business model canvas, try to answer to all the questions and also start to draw already first drawing what all this could look like, what should be displayed, what this information they put in. All this information has then been condensed and reviewed to be able to converge to what we call a wireframe. So this wireframe is actually the structure of any digital interface, any web page. This just a guide, it's a model, and usually static. And that represents mainly the content that will be shown, and also the relation between each and every section, let's say, of the web page or the interface. And so we can understand the hierarchy between the systems and also the type of information that should be integrated. So it should be written information, should be visual one, should be videos. But you never go really into the very details. So you don't decide exactly what the wording will be. You just know there will be some wording about a certain type of subject. And what we also as to put into foreground maybe also is that if you have different type of wireframing, can also enable you to go much further and have already something that looks like the done product. But this enables you actually to have already a system at hand, which can also be made dynamic, and you can use that for testing, for example, with end users, without having to develop the whole system, the whole web page, which can become really costly. So actually the wireframe is also a manner to have something, a prototype that looks like a finished product with very, very, very low budget to just not save for free almost. So thanks to this wireframing, actually we have reduced the system as much as possible and reduced it to 3 main sections. So a first section that enables to present in brief the demo site and also the network itself. And then the users have two choices. So go to the real-time data to see and explore the different data that are visualized and integrated into the dashboard. And on the other side, a pedagogic area, because we already understood that we need to raise awareness really from the beginning on all matters that concern district heating and cooling network, just by the definition of what it is by itself, a district heating and cooling network. What has to be understood is actually in France, we have just about 6% of the heating and cooling needs in the country are delivered by district heating and cooling networks. So we really are in a situations where there's very little, if not say absent awareness about this type of technologies. Nevertheless, this process was not achieved directly, so we had to go through different wireframes, many exchanges. In the beginning, we have seen these things much larger, and so well, it was quite of a long process to get to this minimal viable product, which I have visualized you here. So we have, again, the main section with the presentation of the site, a second section presentation of the district heating cooling network, and then the two other sections, the other two other pages, where data can be explored or information can be found on the form of videos or animated graphics for understanding what this technology is about. So, with this, we had defined our, let's say, our minimal viable product. We developed the system, and we go into 3 iterations more or less with end users to understand what we have produced, what could be ameliorated, is it understandable for the people, what could be done better. So before then moving into really into the lean startup process where we are right now and where we measure the feedback from end users thanks to questionnaires. So we had transformed in the meanwhile this wireframe into a real web page. So as you see on the left side, really try to define three different sections in the system. So we have the first one, which is actually the facility realm, which enables actually is the part that concerns really the network itself. So we have the network, which is own SCADA and control system, and this shouldn't be interfered. So for that, we have, as you see, in this case, we have just 1 hour going out. The choice of the company was to push the data from the networks towards an FTP server. So to avoid any connection and intrusion to the SCADA system, so to ensure this works properly and well without any interference. So once we have retrieved the data from the FTP server, we actually have our own server where we can reuse and rearrange this data as we need it for the visualization in the web page. And on this server, actually, we have the user realm. That's now what you can access and everybody can access. Actually, is the website itself, where you just need graphic and video content. And then we have the part where we exchange and visualize the data itself, which is actually done via a JSON file that is read by these interfaces and visualized, as we will show you afterwards. So what was really useful for us, more than fruitful, it was really useful, was the end user feedback that we got in the 3 iteration process we did, because actually understood that we still were far too technical. Already the notion I said of the low temperature district heating and cooling network was not something people have seemed to be confronted with in the past. So really had to start from the beginning and simplify all the wording. So far of simplification that we have to move away from waste heat recovery, because already the question about waste heat would raise questions. So we invented wording that was called energy recycling, which is something that people could relate much easier. So if we talk about energy recycling, they understand that we're taking some energy which is not used or maybe in surplus, and that we put it into the system, which was something more acknowledgeable than talking about waste heat. And in this which accompanies a little bit also the question about simplification, is that if you cannot use technical wording, you need to use phrasing and paragraphs to make these things knowledgeable. So actually we enlarged quite a lot all the pedagogic content that we had foreseen. So we moved from one page to more pages. So as you see, we schematized it into 4 main pages. But this schematization enabled already the people to grasp a little bit better the complexity of this type of system, but at the same time give us the place to explain every part of the process in more detail and enable us a user which is not being confronted to the matter before to discover that. So we decided this also in the thinking about replication. So we take down the low temperature network in its main components. So the source, what we called here the pumping, the water loop, so just the distribution via the piping, and the substation, which can be at the customer side, and then about recycling, so bring them near the question about waste heat recovery. This also enables us to replicate the dashboard easier, and so if we move on to another type of system, which has another type of source, we don't have to change the whole structure of the web page. We just have to change the naming and the content of the source site and keep the explanation of how a water loop works, or the substation, or the question about waste heat recovery. And as said, we had to do quite a lot of animation, more than foreseen, because we have also seen that from the end users that it was more appreciated to have short videos to look for instead of having written content to be read, maybe a little bit complicated from a mobile phone type of interface. And also we tried to want to put forward the use of animated schemes, but they also have been qualified and not well adapted to this matter, and so everyone wanted us to produce videos, short ones which can explain in an easy manner all this technical content. Also, in the question of simplification, we have understood that showing data to people has no meaning. So if they're not used to, they're not technical people, they won't be able to understand what is shown to them and how to navigate different type of indicators we show them. So we had to contextualize the data. So we've chosen to make simple animations, simple backgrounds, and put on top of them the different information, which then can be clicked and be go into to see how the different data evolve, but to give them a context to relate to that. They understand here is data that relates to the water source, is something that happens on the water. This is on the heat, the cold or the heat, the hot part of a heat exchanger, or different type of information, just that can easier relate to it. Also in the process, what we have understood to be able to put forward the, sorry, just somebody can come in. Maybe I just restart from here. And what we also understood in the process is that what you have here on the left side is the usual way that we represent district heating and cooling network in schemes. And this type of approach does not really fit with the question about district heating and cooling network in a low temperature technology and decentralized technology, because still here it's seen as a linear process, and what we actually propose is going to a circular process where we understand the different relations from heat to source passing through the different decentralized substation, and better explain the performances and advantages of this type of technology. Well, so having said all that, I will show you the dashboard itself as it's today and how these things has gone into the system. So we have built up the web page, both in English and in French, to be able to give, let's say, also the Europeans and non-French speaking people access to it. So as you see, we have the possibility to go directly to the ReUseHeat page. So I'll link to the project page itself, where end users can find more information. And in the upper part, we've chosen to be really short, so to have just a part with the dashboard, so the real-time data, and a short explanation of the project. And what interests us a lot at the time is to just go to the survey page, so where we can get the end user feedback. So once you come into the dashboard, you have a short explanation about the site itself for l'Ascension-Mer, where you can click and read more about the site itself, which is a short description. We've chosen to integrate the subject of energy recycling, just a short explanation how it works, and then people can go and relate and explore each and every section, which we'll do just afterwards, and already have a glimpse about the economic and ecological benefits of this type of network, and then be able to move directly to the real-time data, which are pushed from the district heating and cooling network in Ascension-Mer, and then go into the survey. So let's move up. I'll just show you shortly one of these different sections. So each of these 4 sections give different explanations of the concept itself. So this also the end users can move easily on the top from one subject to the other. So it could choose to go directly from the first one, from the pumping station, move over to the water loop, and then to the substation and the energy recycling. What we have done is to integrate at first the videos, which have been integrated via YouTube, which makes the system running much smoothly, because thanks to the YouTube application, you are able to tailor the quality of the display to the terminal that you are using. And then also this is accompanied by text explaining a little bit in a shorter manner what is explained in the animations, and if needed, some visuals are also integrated into different parts. So I won't go further than that. What we are interested in then is to have the possibility to discover the real-time data. And there, as you see, we've chosen, in this case, to have a first part where you just have the main indicators, so about the avoided CO2, the total consumption of the network, so the electricity consumed, and the thermal production in terms of heating and cooling in a cumulative manner. So that just in a glance the main values of the network. And then we put the pumping station, so in this case the source, and we put one substation, one generic substation, because for this validation processing there is no need to just visualize all different substations, because we have seen that would be really not a need for the people, just for question of awareness. So what we have done so is to contextualize this data. So I think for everybody it's clear where this data relate to, and with the small little icons that just people understand that they can click on these icons and go to the real-time data. So this data, as you can see, we display actually what the indicators means. You have here in this case daily averages, and from when to where this data visualized. And then this data can just be scrolled into, up, and once we scroll into the data, we can actually see that it updates automatically in the resolution and adapts to the view of the people, going down to the half-an-hour resolution, which is the minimal unit that we achieve through the data that are monitored on the network. And once we zoom out, it goes back to a higher aggregation, so that just it doesn't become too messy to read this type of information. And when people can down into technicity and they know about, they will understand that here we have different type of pumping, that we have some variable pumps that are able to adapt to the load of the network, and that for the rest of the time we have stable pumps which don't have any variation, and so that we have this type of, let's say, stable flow. If we go then back, they can also exchange then different information about, for example, the temperature of the primary network during the different seasons, and that we see that they are correlated with the seawater temperature, which actually is the energy source. And if they have the summertime, they will see that it rises up to 30, and that we are more about 8 to 10 degrees in the winter, except some seasonal, except variation. They're given actually by the weather. Same thing for the substation. So we contextualize the data in which we have our primary network which comes in. We decided to not complexify the things and explain that we have plate heat exchangers which hydraulically separate the different networks before going to the heat pump, which actually serves the secondary network. We just wanted to let people understand that we have a heat pump which the consumption of electricity heat ups the water coming in from the primary network for the users of the secondary network. And if people go into the network, we see that we have the same temperatures as we had before, just with small variation because we are another section of the network. And that actually, if we go, for example, to the provision of heating to the condominium, we see that we have a stable temperature between 45 and 48 degrees for a customer, and that we have different variation due to different needs. And well, as in the other case, they can go and zoom into the data and update them into smaller time step, going down to the resolution they need in the terms of what they want to look like. So this about the survey, and I really invite you, if you go and have seen the whole dashboard, you have gone through the different section of it, to click on the survey, which will give you the possibility to answer our survey, which we need to better understand your perception about this network, this dashboard, because we have to validate the interest of this type of system for end users. So all answers are welcome, and I'll invite you to do that. So just to conclude, last slide. So we have gone there from a really broad idea to a finished product. And what we are just doing right now is the dissemination process. So we made this dashboard accessible via the link that you have here up in the top right. And we have started the online survey, as I've just presented you. And what we also miss is the on-site end user feedback. So we are conducting 6 different in-depth interviews, targeting to have the interview of 2 members of a district heating and cooling operator, 2 from the local authority, and 2 end users, which is actually these interviews are a little bit like the online survey, but we want to better understand other drivers and perceptions in a more specific manner, in order to be able to have more information to react on that. And well, and if we are able through this action of dissemination validation to prove that this system has an upper value for the end users, well, we will have to replicate this system to other networks in the region, and not also in the on the French country, which is actually our main target. So thank you very much.